Hello. So before I start my BBC, I want to say that I'm in support of what's happening in terms of more dialogue in this country about race relations and everything that's going on. And what comes to mind is a quote that I read in Madison once on a Catholic church. I can't remember which pope it was, but it says, "This is our cry. This is my cry, dignity for all." And I hold that very dear in my heart, that all beings, human and otherwise, deserve respect and dignity. And so anyone who's left behind in any way or not thought about in that way diminishes us as humans. So the other day, Venerable said something which was perfect, because I've been thinking about this BBC for a couple months, and she kind of captured it. She said, images and analogies can create an effect in the mind. And so a couple months ago, when Venerable was teaching sharing the Dharma Day, you might remember that she listed at least 25 rules of the universe that the self-centered thought does. I had a difficult time after 25 of those, I have to say. And my mind, it just felt, sometimes I don't do well with the self-centered thought teachings. My mind doesn't go in the right place. It felt like there was like 3 or 4 inches of concrete laying everywhere, just oppressing me, very heavy and thick. And so I had this image of concrete going on in my mind around then. And I just thought, and right away I thought, there's cracks in that concrete and these beautiful things come out of the cracks. So I spent 3 or 4 days just to lift my mind up, thinking about all the beautiful things that came out of the cracks in concrete. And then I thought of when we threw all that concrete down the hill and we had to take it away, and we took it over here and made that road and crunched it up and repurposed it. And all the concrete we moved around here and busted up here. And I realized, okay, you can think about all these beautiful things coming out, but at some point you got to deal with that concrete. And then I thought, I think I better get to some images that are Buddhist images to work with this, because the concrete image only went me so far. And then I remembered years ago, I had just I read the middle-length discourses from the Pali Canon twice through. It was way before I moved here, just on my own. It was part of my meditation. And I really loved the one about the anthill. For some reason, it was like this symbolism, this puzzle. So just to make this more, for those who aren't familiar, I'll just kind of try to encapsulate it. It goes, "Thus I have heard, on one occasion, the Blessed One was living in Sravasti, da-da-da-da. And then on that occasion, Kumara Kassapa was living in the blind men's grove. And then, when the night was well advanced, a certain deva of beautiful appearance, who illuminated the whole of the blind men's grove, approached the venerable Kumara Kassapa and stood at one side. So standing, the deva said to him," and then the deva tells this story, like this riddle, full of imagery. And it kind of, summarizing it, goes a little bit like this. The deva starts speaking, and he says, "Bhikkhu, bhikkhu, this anthill fumes by night and flames by day." And then in the riddle, what happens next is a Brahmin appears, and he thus spoke the Brahmin to the monk. "Delve with the knife, thou wise one." Delve with the knife, thou wise one. And then delving with the knife, the wise one saw a bar. "A bar, O venerable sir," thus spoke the Brahmin. "Throw out the bar. Delve with the knife, thou wise one." And then it's delving with the knife. The wise one saw a toad. "A toad, O venerable sir," thus the Brahmin spoke. "Throw out the toad. Delve with the knife, thou wise one." And then the same thing goes on. Delve with the knife for a fork, a sieve, a tortoise, a butcher's knife and block, a piece of meat, and then a naga. And then the Brahmin said, "Leave the naga. Do not harm the naga. Honor the naga." So then the deva tells the monk, "Go to the Buddha and have him explain this to you." And so, so basically, he's he's found this anthill and he's unearthed all these things which he's told to reject except for the last one. So then the Buddha explains all the symbolism. The anthill is a symbol for the body, subject to impermanence, being worn and rubbed away to dissolution and disintegration. And I actually think of it personally as the 5 aggregates. I think it's a little bit bigger, but there's a lot of, when you read commentaries, there's a lot about that. And but what really goes to me is when he says, what one thinks and ponders about by night, based upon one's actions during the day, is the fuming by night. So at night, it's our thoughts, fuming by night. That image is very strong. Then the actions one undertakes during the day by body, speech, and mind, after thinking and pondering by night, is the flaming by day. So flaming by day is our actions. And so then let me give you what some of the symbols are. So, so the Brahman, actually that stands for the Buddha. And then the wise one is the monastic who's in higher training. So they're actually, I think, from what I read, they might even be an Arya. They might be using their penetrating insight. The knife is the noble wisdom or superior insight, and the delving is arousing energy, which is why what I wanted to do. I realized I got to do something about this concrete. I need to arouse some energy. And it took me to this, because I always remembered this delve with the knife, and I had forgotten the flaming by day and fuming at night, but I quite like that. And one thing about delving or creating a lot of energy is what comes to mind for me is something that Lama Tsongkhapa said, which is, I always say it to myself, effort without wisdom leads to exhaustion. What Lama Tsongkhapa actually said was, perseverance by itself ends in exhaustion. If aided by its ally wisdom, it achieves great purposes. So I try to remember that, because I can sometimes throw myself into things without a lot of wisdom, and I just crash and burn. The bar actually stands for ignorance, because they used to use bars to block a city and keep things out. But the one that really speaks to me is the toad. And the toad is actually despair due to anger. And so that's something that was coming up for me. I needed to arouse energy, but then we have the COVID, and now we have the police brutality that we all witnessed, which is not everyone, but of course these events have happened. And so I saw my mind going that direction. And so I like to use this thinking about these things during the day, mostly off the cushion, I would say, because I've been doing this for about 2 months. And I realize I use these images both on and off the cushion. But that one, despair due to anger, I might recognize it, and I'll think, you got to throw that toad out. You got to throw that out. It's not helpful. But I don't necessarily always work with it that way. I usually use the things I've learned from the Lam Rim. Mostly, oftentimes there's a lot of ways to work with anger, but what comes up for me a lot of time is to disregard the harm or the perceived harm, accept the suffering in my mind. And that right there, doing those two things takes me a long way, and then apply the Dharma tools. But even those first 2 steps I find helpful. But when I'm moving around during the day, it reminds me, when that comes up, I have to throw that out. That monk got enlightened due to this sutta. So this is not like small change here. The fork stands for doubt, which I already know is a dead end. And the sieve stands for the 5 hindrances, which are things I really resonate with and have used in my practice. The other ones I'm not going to really speak about that much. So what I think about with this is to me, it's a way to arouse energy when I think of this simile or this metaphor, or whatever it is, this imagery. It's like, I start to recognize I'm going through the day this is coming up for me. I need to use some energy here. I need to delve with the knife, and I need to throw that out. And then when I'm on the cushion, I might do it in a different way. But then the image that really then started coming to me was thinking about green Tara. And this is what I go kind of back between these two, depending on what's going on for me. My habit in the world was to move into action very quickly and not to really calm my mind first and and just figure out what needs to be done and come from the right place. I'm just like set up for action right away. And so Tara, green Tara, is a perfect image for me. I find this, especially, there's a lot of symbolism to green Tara, but what I use mostly are the limbs. So green Tara is a manifestation of a Buddha, a female form, sitting in a very, on a lotus, on a throne, in a very posture of ease. But what I really resonate with, and I'll start with the way that I work with it, the left leg is drawn in like in meditation, this sense of stability, this sense of togetherness, collectedness, like, yeah, how calm and peaceful the mind can be, but very stable. It stands for meditative stability. And then the left hand is in the gesture of refuge. And there, like for me, like when I'm the person who wants to be so active, but sometimes like my mind, I'm going like out of control. Maybe my mind's getting overwhelmed or some affliction is taking over. I just like, I need to be more stable here. And I think of the position and I need to take refuge. That whole left side of the body of Tara is the wisdom side, the calming side, the introspective side, the collect yourself before you act side. And so that's very helpful to me, especially, those two are very potent for me to think about making my mind stable and putting my mind in refuge. It helps me to have a better perspective. And then when I'm more like able, then I am more able with that. Then is the right hand, which is in the gesture of granting sublime realizations, which is also the gesture of generosity. So now the mind that takes delight in giving, that wants to be involved, that wants to do something, and has the right mindset to do it. And then the right leg, which is kind of out, ready, getting up, in the act of getting up. So that's like the whole right side is then like this expression of compassionate activity. So I have to say, most of the time when this comes up to me, I'm having to focus on the left side. I need to like rein myself in. I need to get myself more calm. My mind might be just overwhelmed sometimes by like what I'm reading in the news in particular. Sometimes it's like, I find it destabilizing in a way. And I need to get myself more stable. I need to get myself grounded. I need to take safe direction in things that actually can be a safety for my mind, which is taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And of those, in particular, the Dharma, the realizations and the cessations. So any kind of understanding I have of the Dharma, of things that help me to hold on to my integrity, to consideration for others, to keep my ethics in place, to keep my precepts in place, to not be a jerk, anything, the things that are wholesome and beneficial. I have to focus on that left side so then I can think about how am I to engage with the world. So what's nice about that is these images contain, like a picture speaks 1,000 words. So it's like the image, when you just look at an image, it might not have much meaning for you. But when you have your practice and you imbue these things with meaning, then they can carry great meaning. And they can be like a quick symbol, like, oh, I need to throw that toad out. Oh, I need to make my mind stable here, and I need to take refuge. And just bringing up the image can quickly kind of pull me back. So I find that, as Venerable said, these images and analogies create an effect in the mind, and they do so, I think, kind of quickly, which I think is convenient. So maybe that will be of help to someone.